know you're in Gloucester,
so mine's going. So you just start yours as normal, and if we need the backup, then I can copy the backup across.
Okay. Hello, welcome everybody. I'm Ameena Ahmed. I'm founder of Freethinkers Hub, and our theme today for this podcast is really interesting. It's all about a new financial system called the Global People's Monetary System. And I'm very excited and delighted to have with me today one of the founders of this, who is Lee Mudway. Lee, by his own admission, is quite a normal guy. But in the early 2019, there was a shift in his world. He's always questioned, sought the truth, and it's always been fun for him to think outside the box. But now he can see what he sees and is aligned with the GPMS, or the Global People's Monetary System, as a release instrument during the end days of what was. He defines himself as an ascension seer, and his skills are seeing the bigger picture and painting detail to him. Maybe his background in regulatory frameworks helps with this. But Lee has a particularly interesting life story himself, has suffered from some depression in his time, and has been considered a misfit in society. So my pleasure to welcome you, Lee, to talk more about yourself and the Global People's Monetary System. I hope that intro does you justice.
Thank you very much, Ameena. It's a pleasure to be here. More than happy to chat about this. More than happy to give the information that I've got anyway, my perspective on it all.
Well, I mean, it's more than give the information. I mean, you see yourself as very much a conduit for something much higher than you or us, or and that's what's so exciting about this talk, is that, you know, the integrity you come with. And I really, you know, that was one of the things that came from our initial conversations. So let's go straight into this. Okay, GPMS, Global People's Monetary System. It's going to be a new concept for many people on this call. You say it's a full template for a new system based on the real rule of law, or the natural rule of law. And I'd like you to talk about what you mean by that.
So let's start with GPMS and what it is. We've got, what would we say? We've got different factions out there at the moment in what we would class as reality. We've got those that are following the science, and we've got those that aren't, per se. So there's people that are waking up all over the place, or waking up to something isn't quite right, and they're looking for different answers. There's a lot of people looking for answers. There's a lot of people not. But what basically GPMS does is it gives humanity the option, the choice, which isn't there at the moment, or hasn't been there in the past, to actually choose a different system, to choose to not be under this capitalistic rule, this globalistic rule, this one world order, or whatever you want to call it, this governmental order, and say, listen, that didn't work for us. It created poverty, disparity, lack, death, starvation, all these different things. And it made everybody work very hard for a minimal amount of money, blah, blah, blah. And we can see this in many facets of life. So what GPMS does is says, listen, if the people, the 6 billion, 7 billion souls that are on this planet, just put their voices together and say, listen, we would like a new system that benefits us as opposed to oppresses us, what would that bring? So what GPMS offers or says it's an outline instrument, really. It says it's not just a financial structure. It's not just a new system like that. But what it does is it takes all of the existing benevolent systems and fully funds everything. And what I mean by fully funding is the value inside every soul is inside the human soul. It's not in a material wealth. It's not in a material aspect that can be given value. You're not worth how much money you've got. You're worth an infinite amount from the inside. And this is where the value really sits inside humanity, is from within. So what GPMS says is we recognize that value. We recognize that divinity, that sovereignty within, and we put it back within. So everybody gets unlimited value, because that's how much they are worth from the inside. Everything is fully funded. So there is no debt. There never was debt. This is an illusion that's been created once people start to realize the credit system is fraudulent towards them. It takes their credit and turns it into debt for the governments, et cetera, to oppress. This puts the credit back in. If you want to use credit, I'm not credibility to it, but it gives full, unlimited, unbounded, unlimited access to value from the inside, as well as funding everything else that's benevolent to the human society. So humanity basically chooses to be free of poverty, lack, starvation, to be free of profit and loss, to be free of economy and wealth and disparity and all of these things that are used to compress, and actually use all the benevolent systems to forward humanity and thrive with freedom, absolute abundance. And with that comes the universal law, the universal natural law. So all of this legal structure and all of these rules of economy and rules of the universal commercial codes, the admiralty laws, maritime laws that people will start to understand will be defunct. They're no good. They're no good for anybody. They're good for the few. They're not good for the all. So what GPMS basically says is, listen, this is good for all. It's not good for a few. All it takes is a choice. Do you fancy this, or do you want to stick with the old that oppresses you? So the universal laws are the basic, simple ones. You can bring them down to do no harm. But what they basically are is they bring back in what's classed as unalienable rights. Now, unalienable means, by definition, not being able to contract out. So you can't give them away and they can't be taken away from you. Unalienable rights to self-determination, to freedom, to expression, to belief, these things that are humane, unalienable rights that have been obfuscated by the old system. They've been tantamount to removed under people's noses, even though they can't be. They have been. And they return back to what's classed as sovereignty. And sovereignty's etymology is above authority, which is equality.
Yeah,
so
I mean, there's an awful lot in what you're unpacking there, Lee, and just to break that down a little bit, because I think you're clearly fully aligned to the system, and for many there'll be lots in there that will just be too out there. It's like, what do you mean no taxes? Everything's provided, no debt, everything gets funded. That we're all sovereign, and we base our value on our human sovereignty. So, I think one of the things that is coming through from what you're saying is this beyond the kind of legal, contractual, man-made laws, there's a much higher law. And I know you've talked, about human beings being divine, living, creator creatures. And that the Mother Earth is abundant with everything that we need, and that's the infrastructure that supports us. So it's about connecting with that. Is that what you're really saying in terms of value?
In as much as that, yes, it's respecting and looking after the things that are meaningful. So the way that the earth has been, or the natural resources have been abused, if you want to call it that, for the sake of profit and loss is unnecessary in a different system. It's necessary in a capitalistic system, but it's not in a humane system. So I would suggest that the vast majority of normal people do not want to churn up the earth for its mineral resources. If they were given another choice, they wouldn't do that. The fact is that we've been indoctrinated to believe that that's the way things are. Well, it's not the way things have to be. This is the difference. So it's this opening of the mind into, well, if I was given a choice, would I do that? And I think the vast majority would say, no, they wouldn't do it by choice, but they do it by necessity because they're told they have to. So this is the difference with what we're going through at this point in time is, are you going to stick with being told what you have to do by the people that are profiting from it? Or do you feel inside of you, and most people do, that there must be a better way? So even with regards to burning fuel, burning natural resources to create electricity, is there a better way? Have we ever contemplated that there may be a better way? And these sort of ideas, now we know that, they're telling us all these different things are going on. Are they? Is it down to us? Is it down to the pollution? Is it down to them trying to profit from all of this? Is there a better way? So it's these sort of questions that are going to be in the mass majority of people's minds at this point in time, especially seeing what's going on with all the scare, the fear, the propaganda, if you want to call it that, that's being purported and pushed into the mainstream. Is that all real? Is that what I've chosen? Do I want this for everybody else? Do I want this for my family? Do I want this for my grandchildren? Do I want this oppression for them? Is there a better way? Have we got a choice?
Yeah, well, I think, the fact that it's become so obvious that so much is contrived, and people are seeing the deceit and the criminality of what's around us in our governance, in our government, in our laws, in everything. That the right to question is coming to the fore. So what you're talking about is not only the right to question, but the right to have some responsibility and some control over decision making, which brings us back to human sovereignty, because I think some of our listeners and our viewers will certainly know about human sovereignty. Some may not know that, but listening to you speak before, you talk about human sovereignty as being above what many people will be familiar with. They'll see it as common law and the inalienable rights in earlier constitutions, whereas your definition of human sovereignty is different. So would you like to tell us more about that?
It's above the common law, what you would class as constitutional rights and these things, because they were all obfuscated. If you look at the Magna Carta, the common law, what's happened to it? It's gone. Nobody's got it. Now they're in the legal stricture. So common law was removed. It was obfuscated. It was by deceit, basically. So if you can take away an unalienable right, then by definition, it's not unalienable. So common law itself is faulty in that aspect, that it could be undermined by a different system, and everybody fell into it. So what this does is it mixes common law with natural law or universal law at those aspects. So it takes the common law, but makes it unmanipulable, if you like. So it doesn't need to be written down in pages and pages and reams, because 12 expressions of it is enough for everybody to work with. Do no harm is simple. It's not. It doesn't need pages of stuff on that. Do no harm. Treat others like you want to be treated. These sort of things. We all know them as human. They're morals. They're inbuilt morals and ethics that everybody knows and everybody understands. And this is the beauty of them. It doesn't need reams. It doesn't need documents. It just is a known aspect. Now we can see that could take a little bit of time for people to realize, but realistically, that once the humanity comes back in and the oppression is released, poverty and lack and fear of the future and not having enough is released, in my mind anyway, that those morals and ethics become paramount, and they're what then people strive for, as opposed to seek. They want to act that way because it's the right way of being, and they know it to be the right way of being, as opposed to the wrong way, which is where we are now, where you run over your neighbors to get to work, you step on people to earn a few more so you're better than others. It's not humane. And everybody knows this, but they're in their bubbles and survival bubbles, et cetera, et cetera. So as this breaks down and as these questions start to come in, we end up in this confused bewilderment, if you like, of where to go next. And there's the choice.
Before we go on to how to take those next steps and translating that vision into actions, one of the things that comes across, because the consenting is very, very paramount in your system, isn't it? It's consenting to that. And certainly one of the laws governing the universe is that we have free will. So that's an inalienable right, having free will. But many people don't realize that, that they have free will, and they're tricked in giving that away. And that's how these systems work, isn't it? Is that they trick people all the time.
It's through, with menace, with terror, with fear, and that's the rule of control for the old system, for the government system, is rule of control through fear and deceit. People can be unaware of it, unobservant of it, but it's nevertheless there. They can see it. So yes, unalienable cannot be taken away, and free will is the law of the universe. So GPMS works on a consensual basis, which says once the voice is created of enough of humanity, then this system will come to inception, because there is no government, there is no control or authority above a certain amount of energetic value, i.e. human consent. So when people do consent energetically, that adds weight to the overall voice. As it stands, we've got about 12,000. We're looking at about 1.6 billion, maybe between 800 million and 1.6 billion before that there's enough energetic value in that voice to change the whole of the environment in which the human experience is played out in. So as people start to see that there could be a difference, and they consent to an idea that is GPMS, that is fully funding everything and taking ownership. I don't know, ownership's the wrong word. Stewardship and guardianship of all beneficial systems and fully funding them all with an unlimited account. And everybody has an unlimited account. Privacy, transparency, and all these things come back in. This is purity. They choose to go that way. The voice, the creation of that voice, the energy behind that voice then brings this to inception. The experts, et cetera, in the fields, the very fields. We did an interview yesterday on hollow cryptocurrency, hollow blockchain, a hollow chain, which is a newer blockchain, which could work. But I don't know. It doesn't matter how we run it out. The existing system will cope. But the experts, as the voice comes together, the influencers and those in the fields that are brilliant at what they do, education, governance, however, or leadership, administration, all these will step into the roles that the old have departed from. Let's put it that way. A lot of the systems are in place that we already need. We don't need to create new systems necessarily. What we need to do is amend the old systems and put benevolence in them, start to work for the people. So this is what GPMS runs on, is that basis of popular consent, creating the energetic voice of change, and then the right people stepping into the right places to benefit the majority, well, all, because everybody is a shareholder in everything.
It's interesting because it does need people to buy that vision, to consent to it, to want it. And I know that you've used the term outside the prison walls is heaven, but we know that many want to stay within the prison walls because of the comfort of it. So I'm just wondering, you've come across the term bifurcation of Earth, I'm sure, which is the Earth's going to split between the old and the new Earth, and some will choose to stay behind. So, well, firstly, is that your vision also? And secondly, would GPMS be in any rudimentary form in the old Earth?
Yeah, there's two ways of looking at it. One is the bifurcation timeline, which is the separation, and then one is the other. There's everything's a possibility. So I've looked into them all. Bifurcation may be a necessity because of the disparity between the two timelines. It's coming up now as more probability than it used to be, whereby it's becoming more obvious to everybody that's awake to a certain level that it's very difficult to even have a conversation now with somebody who's still asleep, if you want to call it that way. The levels of disparity are quite large. So there may be a necessity whereby a certain section of awakened do split dimensionally. I'm not going to say the Earth's going to split, but just a dimensional shift and the old are left in. But what the old have got now is the template for GPMS, which is the full release system for them. So if that was the case, then all of the teachings and all of the vision and all of the release systems will be left in place for it to come to fruition anyway. So yes, it's part of both. It's inevitable for it to come into play anyway. It's just when, and if there is a separation of timelines, then it would be a little bit later in the one and straight away in the other. If there is, I don't necessarily say that has to be the case. Because an energetic shift can happen with the masses at the same time as well, and it can catch up as is without a bifurcation. Will some souls be leaving? Yes, that's inevitable during this transition, but that doesn't again necessitate a bifurcation timeline. So it's not like a mass shift. But so all of these are possibility. It's all down to the divine plan.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so wonderful and incredibly pure, as you say, because it is based on a divine law. There are other systems like Nesara Gesara, and I have to admit that prior to this whole pandemic situation, I hadn't particularly known of Nesara Gesara. I know they're man-made systems developed, was it in the 90s by the White Hats? No, have I got that wrong?
50s.
Oh, in the 50s, yeah, in anticipation that the whole systems would collapse. So where does GPMS align or fit or stand apart from?
Well, Nesara Gesara got some fundamental flaws, and I'm going to make this nice and straightforward and simple without too much fluff. They are being given to humanity. Now, I would question anything that is being given to humanity at this point in time, because anything that's being given has been given with an agenda. Now, I'm going to outline a couple of things wrong with Nesara Gesara, which puts me on the periphery of the alt media. One is that they say that there will be a debt wipe. Well, there is no debt. So what are they wiping? Their debt, right? They've taken humanity's credit and they've turned it into debt. And they've said it's ours. It's not ours, it's theirs. So with regards to a debt wipe, it would be wiping their ledger clean. And I use the word "their" as in the corporations that rule this plane, that have authority over. So there is no debt. So how can you have a debt wipe? The second one it does is purports that governments will be required, or one world government would then be in place. Well, government means govern mind, and govern mind is the corporate arm of the corporations that control each country at profit from the individuals in that country. Corporate govern minds are not a good thing. So you've got a debt wipe, it doesn't exist, and another corporate govern mind going into place. This is being given by somebody in authority that says you can have this. Well, anybody that says I can have anything from their scraps from the table is not telling me the truth. It's not giving me a choice. If I don't want that, what's my option? No, this is your option. This is the freedom tool, is it? I'm not so sure about that, my friend. So you got that too. So you've got these three things. A, it's a carrot on a stick being dangled in front of everybody in the alt side saying, Gesara and Nesara will save you. B, it's saying there's a debt wipe. There wasn't any. C, it's incorporating more government structures. It's not transparent. It's nowhere near pure. And it's dangled like a carrot for those starving animals, which most of us are, to say, yes, please, I'll have whatever I can get. Thank you, sir. And that's not going to be the case. Humanity, it's being used to obfuscate humanity again, to hide and to be deceptive as good. But in ultimately, it's not. And if it was any good, where is it? Why hasn't it been imported before? What stopped that? Why wasn't it there? Why has this gone on for so long now? 18 months later, we're going to get Nesara soon, are we? Are you down enough yet to accept the scraps from the table, or you're going to push you a little bit more before you say, yes, please, thank you, and wipe all their debts and put them back in charge again to re-manipulate and re-loop back in the future? So we've got to...
You're almost implying it's part of the controlled opposition.
It's not great in my mind, especially the way it's being used. If it came in the 70s, which I believe it should have done, then it would have set humanity up for this release at the moment into a newer system, so a newer paradigm. But it didn't. So I'm not going to say it was wrong initially in its inception idea, but its time is over for it to be any good. And as I say, if you look at what's out there in the alt media, what's everybody's savior in alt media is Nesara Gesara. Well, why has that gone viral, and why has that been allowed to go viral, and why isn't the news saying anything bad about it? Because there's something in there that isn't of the light, if you want to call it that way. It's still a manipulation tool. It's still man-made. It's not a freedom passport. It doesn't incorporate new laws. It still keeps commerce, economics, wealth disparity, and the capitalistic regime empowered. And I would suggest that all of those things are not in the benefit of humanity as a whole. But
well, I mean, I guess, listening to you, Lee, that there's some kind of divine order, isn't there, in that it didn't happen in the 70s, and that it's allowed to kind of become defunct and become non-credible in that sense. So, maybe it's served its purpose in that.
And it's still doing that now. With it's taking a lot of people down that path where they're wanting this savior tool, as opposed to choosing their own savior tool. This is where I am with a lot of this. Anything that's what I said this yesterday, and I say it outright to you, Ameena. I believe that humanity, nothing will be given to humanity. Humanity will choose it now. I believe we're at that point where anything that's being offered or given will not work. It is not beneficial. It will be chosen. So humanity will stand up and choose a new line, a new paradigm, a new way. And so these things that people are running after, they're following this carrot, hoping it will come in, and who's in control of it, and where is it, and what's it going to be, and all these different things. Well, they'll give it me soon. Well, eventually they're going to have to make a choice that it's not coming in, or it's not that beneficial, and where is it? Well, I'm seeing people die all around me. They're still jabbing people, all these things going on. What's going on? Where's Gesara? Yeah, because you haven't made a choice. You're waiting to be given something. Make a choice. Put your energy somewhere else and your attention somewhere else, and save yourself, if you want to call it that way. The more of us that do this and see a different way, then that just goes away.
Yeah, so this 1.8 billion that you were saying about really being on that higher level of consciousness, awareness of being really awake, will be the tipping point that these old systems, banks, governments just cannot resist. I mean, we've got evidence of that on the streets already, haven't we? We've seen millions and millions of people out there protesting, wanting that change. Does that give you incredible hope that this is quite imminent?
Absolutely. What you've got is the millions that are protesting. That's the anger inside them. That's their primal rage, if you want to call it that, coming standing up against the government. But it's still giving the government's authority, saying, they're going after them, saying, stop what you're doing, and start doing what you should be. Well, yeah, they'll start to get away from that as they become more non-compliant, or it'll start to get more chaotic. Either way, it's good. So what you're doing is you're getting all this primal anger coming up in the ones that are standing up. You've also got, that's only the tip of the iceberg, because there's a very large underbelly that don't protest, that still know there's a lot wrong with the systems, but they're maintaining themselves in it's not so much complacency, but it's in a position of, let's see. So you've got quite a few that are standing up in the millions, and you've got a lot more that aren't, but are aware that there is something very, very wrong. So I've been saying for about the last 2 months, and there hasn't been any moves, but the next move will be consequential. So if somebody does something next, the next lockdown will be consequential as opposed to substantial. Before it was substantial, a lot of people complied. I think it's at the point now where it'll be consequential for them to make that next move, where people won't comply, and then it starts to get the ball rolling a little bit more. We're seeing that in Melbourne, in Australia, where they've stood up. They're almost going to take down their government in Melbourne. There's millions, and the police there, they've got all sorts going on down there. So what people are unaware of is what's going on around the world, and how many protests there are, and how many millions are standing up and walking the streets and saying no more. Alongside, Austria's locking down now the unvaccinated. So you've got this division and separation. Now, are the vaccinated, a bit like the Second World War, are the vaccinated going to say, well, it's your fault? Or are they going to stand up and say, what's this about? It depends on where you are in the world as to how you're being hit and what you're being oppressed and where you're being oppressed. But nevertheless, the more that stand up, the more that are going against it, the more that are non-compliant, the more that refuse it, the more that ignore it. They've got no power.
I think it's, there's another element to this, isn't there? That it's not just about fighting it. It really is about coming together. And that time for coming together is very much now, because, GPMS is very much about energy, value being energy. And if we think about what's happening with the planet and the energetic shifts in our timeline, it's very different from the Second World War. So there's absolutely, in my mind, not going to be a replay of that at all.
No.
We might be taken to the edge of believing it will be, but there's just no way it can happen in the same way, because we're, human beings are much lighter now. We're not as in the dark ages, are we?
It's not going to happen. It's what it is the play. It's the show, if you want to. I call it a show because it's a reality show.
Or the Truman Show.
It's the Truman Show. Yeah, I'm so detached from it now because it's just a farce. You've got actors playing their roles perfectly well. So what we see as bad is just somebody playing their role perfectly well to push people to a breaking point where they do stand up and save themselves. So it's all of this is happening. We can see it as suffering. We can see it as all these different words, but effectively what it is pushing and compressing and squashing that carbon under heat and pressure into the beautiful diamond that it is. And that's what's happening on an individual as well as a macro basis around the world. All of these players are playing their games, be them dark hat, white hat, whatever you want to say, in this show for people to get to the final curtain and go, well, that was a funky ride, but then at the end of it is a beautiful, outside the prison walls is heaven. But they're so used to the prison. It's I'm safe in here. I can survive in here, but outside is the beauty. They will have to leave the walls and see that it's beautiful. And this is where we are.
I was listening to, you know Cryon, don't you? I was listening to a Cryon channel last night, and Cryon said it's not going to be Pollyanna, the new Earth. He said it's going to be one where there will be disagreement because there'll be different levels of wisdom, but people won't kill each other for their differences, and that's going to be the new Earth. And I thought that was absolutely so realistic and interesting. And I thought about GPMS in advance of our interview today, and I thought, well, actually, you are looking for the infrastructure to come from the populace, from the combined wisdom, knowledge, and skills. And that will mean collaboration, about unity. And there will be some differences, won't there, along the way? So it will play out in that way, won't it?
At that level, yeah. But it's the beauty is an expanded or higher consciousness. You can't come in with an agenda. You can come in with a difference of opinion, but no agenda. So nothing from a fear-based, if you wanted to call it fear-based energy, will be accepted or pandered to. It won't. So different beliefs are perfect. Because you can believe whatever you want, I still love you. It's fine. And this is where you get the cultural and societal differences. We're not trying to herd cats. We're letting the cats herd themselves with this one, because we know that there's going to be this sort of level of, well, we need this and we need that. And yeah, fine. Nobody's stopping you. This is the beauty of it. That you don't have to have an argument about anything as long as it's pure, as long as it's beneficial and it's not gracious, yeah, that's the word, then run with it, because everything is abundant, everything is open, and there is absolute freedom. So I get the difference in beliefs, and that will happen on the micro to the macro, but with an instrument that's so transparent, so open, so pure, and so non-definitive. This is the beauty of it. It doesn't say you can't. It says do whatever you need.
I know you do say it's a very simple tool, because adding layers of complexity limits it. Just staying with that aspect of the purity, you really do consider children's voices in this system more than other systems around the world. And there's something like 2 billion children on the planet, which you factored in. So just tell us more about that, because, these are going to be the people, the future, aren't they, that will really run with it.
Thank you. I keep forgetting in these conversations to mention the children. I don't know why, but I do. They go on a different level. So thank you for bringing me back to that. Yes, this actually, GPMS says that from the time you're born, you can consent to it. It's not saying a human soul below the age of 16 has less rights. It recognizes everybody as equal. So it fully incorporates children's voice and vote. I think we've got one 7-year-old that's voted himself or herself. But if the child is too young or doesn't comprehend it yet, then the parent can vote for the child. Or consent, whatever the word is. So this is any child can choose this too. So a child that's 13, 14, do they want a life of 40, 60 hours a week working for poverty or whatever? Or if I get through school and I go through 5-7 years of training, then I might get a decent job, but I have to pay back hundreds of thousands, and all of this is gone. And will they choose to live that life or a different option? So again, what I say about GPMS is it's not just from your point of view, if you're a little bit older, saying, well, I don't see how this will work. It's thinking about the generational aspect in two generations or 3 generations time. What would you like then for the children? What do you expect somebody else to do it for you and change the system? Or is this system going to get worse and worse and worse for those generations? Should the children have a voice now? Of course they should. So GPMS says anybody, any soul's voice counts. Any energetic value counts. So if you have got children and you're aligned to GPMS, vote for consent for them too, because it all builds up. The energetic value all builds up and the voice all builds up. So thank you for reminding me.
Well, I think more so, not so much the reminder of children, but it's also that, the world is changing. And so the type of children, the type of souls that are coming in are changing as well. So they will be, there'll be, certainly amongst some of the listeners and viewers, will be going, look, this is just so off limit. How the hell can we have an abundance? How the hell can we have a world without lots of structures that are going to be self-governing on the basis of true humanitarian liberty and dignity and respect? There's going to be people who will just say, no, that's not going to happen. Well, they've just created that reality, haven't they? It's not going to happen in their reality, that's for sure, unless they can make that shift. Because, one of the things that is really strong about your system is that it's a system of co-creation. So it's based on the law of physics, isn't it? That everything manifest in the universe is created from through observation and through experience.
Yeah, through you could say law of physics or the law of there's many laws, but what it is, co-creation on a benevolent level. So this is at a higher consciousness balance of masculine and feminine, if you want to see it that way, in harmony. So it's symbiotic, it's harmonious, co-creation for the benefit of all. It's what Ubuntu is. If it's not good for all, it's no good for anyone in that aspect. So this is where you get this co-creative aspect or manifestation aspect of what GPMS is. It's the most beneficial, benevolent, organic structure moving forward that's symbiotic and harmonic at the same time. And it doesn't matter where you're from or what belief system or what background you've got, creed, color, or it doesn't matter, because it's the most beneficial for you, because you're creating it, not anybody else. And that's the beauty of it. People don't realize that it's not about what GPMS will give them. It's about what they choose. If you choose that you can't have abundance, you can't have humanity, you can't live in a humane world, well, don't then. That's fine, but it doesn't mean to say others can't. And the more that do, the more that choose. Then the ones that didn't, well, this can't happen, and then they see it happening, they go, oh, it's very, very quickly everything can change from that, no, it can't happen, they wouldn't let us mindset, to, oh, well, I'm on board. Why not? And it doesn't matter what level of consciousness you're at. It doesn't matter whether you believe in God or whether you believe in the universal laws or whether you believe in the ether, the invisible world, or whether you don't. It's whether you believe that you have a choice to be freer and abundant now. If you don't, then don't. But if you think you may have, then just put a consent on the website. No contract, just a consent. Yeah, okay, whatever. Boom, bang it on there. If you think more and you could help, if you know others that can get the word out and see that the humanity in this instrument, because what we are looking for is influencers, leaders, paymasters, key holders, whoever you want to see them as, stopping their projects, their individual projects maybe, and uniting a little bit towards a more unified project, a common goal that really brings humanity out, so we can get the word out to these individuals so they come and start to talk with us. No, we're not going to talk to them, with us. Let's create at that level too. So this is where we are with it. It's all about choice. And, you can choose not to, or you can choose to see that there may be a different option and have a go.
So, you've already given a call to action to our viewers, our listeners, about, what they can do to align to the GPMS framework and the values. Just quickly before we do go, you do have a rollout kind of plan in it. I don't know what the different phases are. Do you want to just talk about that briefly?
Phase 1 is the creation of the website. Phase 2 is the creation of the voice. Phase 3 is the inception. That's how simple it is.
Okay.
So it's humanity chooses a different way with enough energetic intent, content, however you want to see that again. And then at that time, when there is 800 to 1.6 billion involved, that time there will be enough of the experts, the higher consciousness ones together all around the plane to actually bring this to inception through whatever means it is. So it can be done in a couple of months. It can be, it takes as long as it takes. I mean, as Rick will say, the Guardian, if you want, or the founder of GPMS will say, if the governments had our best interests at mind, they could do this in 2 days, because there is no debt. It's all fraud. That is all utter fraud. And the governments are all completely and utterly funded, as are many other institutions around this plane. There is no debt. So they could give humanity the benefit and the abundance that they deserve. It's our birthright, but they've chosen not to. So now it's up to us to say, well, we'll choose it then. And, along those routes. So yeah, it can be done very, very quickly. It all depends on the creation of the voice and the dropping of some egos, the connection at a higher level, if you want, of some others to come together to start to roll this towards a common goal that doesn't say it was mine, I saved the world. No, the world saved itself. And this is there's a perfectly good instrument, and all of your answers are perfectly aligned to what this will be. So come and have a chat. Come and get together and let's take this forward, as opposed to you run that way, and we'll just sit here twiddling our thumbs waiting for you to come, because that's what we're doing at the moment. And as this is happening, then the public will see a choice, maybe find the choice, as the censorship is a little bit tight in different countries. So getting the information out about GPMS is a little bit awkward. So word of mouth is the best way. Talking to people.
I mean, that was one of the reasons why I set up Free Thinkers Hub, because of the censorship on social media. I mean, I was banned on one of my accounts, and I wasn't saying anything at all extreme. I was just, presenting facts of the situation, but obviously, as we know, that's not welcome by mainstream media. So, the fact that we've aligned, and, I'm able to, through the Free Thinkers Hub, get GPMS out there. I just think that is incredibly powerful, because, this whole chaos that we're going through has brought this wonderful order of us, souls meeting and connecting and forming these alliances and being self-determining. And, that's certainly the way of the future, isn't it? And it's
sovereignty.
I just see it as a very, very beautiful, new earth that we're going into. But in order to do that, we have to work on ourselves, don't we? To give ourselves permission to not sit in lack. And to give ourselves permission to really forgive ourselves and to love ourselves for who we are, which are divine creatures, divine beings.
That's it's a different journey in an aspect. This is, we can look at different things that are required of individuals to release themselves from the old indoctrination, the old ways. But the love and the forgiveness aspect is paramount in lifting your frequency. It's that removal of those dark or denser tethers, those anchors within you. So to forgive yourself, and then you forgive others, and then you accept that it was just a journey and it was just a lesson that you learned from it, and then you become grateful.
That would be within your, your 12 rights or laws or maxims, wouldn't it? Which is to almost like to, I don't have them to hand, but treat others as you would treat yourself.
But I think that's a moral code that we all carry. The damage or the internal release of the forgiveness and all that is something that people can do on their individual mode. But realistically, if you took away the poverty, the oppression and suppression, if you took away the lack and the fear instantaneously from the masses, I think that even the most skeptical would say that the majority of the mass would still run on a moral, ethical guidance from the inside. We don't have authority in our own homes, yet we act in a moral way. The majority, I'm not going to say all, there's always, the outliers, but the masses will. They don't have a leader in their own homes. They don't have authority telling them what they can and can't do in their own homes, yet when they walk out on the street, that's what they expect. Authority above them, rules. What? Take you home out onto the street and behave that way out there. It's not difficult. None of these are difficult things. It's just we're not used to them. It's the prison cell that we're used to, where all of these rules are in place, and that's the way we've got to. That's what keeps us safe. No, you're safe in your house without them. You know.
Well, I think that's a beautiful metaphor to kind of end the conversation on, and it's almost like, home is where the heart is. So, if the heart is aligned to the good, then it's a self-regulating kind of way of living. And I think that's what you're saying. It's not complicated, is it? So you've got www.gpms.world. Is that right on is that your website?
Yeah, that's the website to look at. The majority of the information is on there. There's also a YouTube channel that's linked off that site, where a few interviews are that we've done based on our perspective. But bearing in mind that the GPMS instrument is purely an open source instrument. So my perspective is different to another's, is different to another's. But they've all got the same common goal of abundance and freedom. So there's more information on the YouTube channel. We've got Instagram and other different bits and pieces, but basically the website gives you an outline of what the divine plan is, where GPMS is, the consent forms on there. There's an old versus new comparison chart, which shows what can be very, very quickly as opposed to what was, which is very powerful tool. When people look at that, they can see what they got as opposed to what they could have very quickly. And it's all through choice. There's nothing can stop it. There's no power or authority on the earth can say no. It's just our choice. This is the difference. So the GPMS site carries all of that. If individuals want to see more complexity, they're not going to find it, because it's not going to be a complex system. It doesn't need to be. Complexity is unnecessary going forward. Simplistic is the way forward, because that maintains transparency and purity. The more we've been involved in complexity, we've seen how difficult it is and how many layers of debris or detritus we have to wade through, and how sticky it is. And it was created on purpose. So let's look at it the other way around. Let's make it simple. It's too simple to understand. Well, it's not. Just stop thinking complex thoughts in that aspect. Just see how simple it can be. And that's the words I can give. The best words I can give is choose simple, choose unlimited as opposed to limited, and don't choose complexity. It's not necessary. It's just the way we think. So again, this is a little bit of a mindset alterer, a little bit of a sit back and go,
And I think that's okay, isn't it? Because this is a time where people are realigning, recalibrating, redefining their lives and themselves and what they're looking for. So, it's a great compass, isn't it? To say, forget the complexity, go to this simplicity, because there you'll find the purity. That's where you'll find the balance as well, which is really what GPMS is based on, which is, balancing, in the laws of the universe that are based on higher consciousness and higher working. So Lee, thank you so much. It's been really good to talk with you. We've covered a lot in our time together. And I hope that our listeners and viewers will really get an understanding of this system, and be inspired to find out more and to become players in it, because we all have a role to play. So thank you very much for coming to talk today, and just want to say goodbye. And
it's been a pleasure.
I know that we'll talk again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you very much for aligning a little bit with this. We can talk a lot more about this, and I'm open to talk a lot more and answer some questions, maybe if others have got questions they may want to ask. And I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Well, they can, I'll post this on the Free Thinkers Hub, and they'll be able to contact you through the details that you've given and that I'll show on the site. So, let's hope that, viewers here will become part of that 1.8 billion, which are out there just waiting to know about a different way to do things, because they've got their sovereignty intact.
I will put in that I don't believe it's 1.6, and I don't believe it will take that many. But
I don't think so either. But
800 million to 1 billion, either way. Once this starts to roll, it will roll. We've got seven, I think maybe 8,000 Thai sovereigns that have joined. So it's got to Thailand, and it's gone through the sovereignty community out there. It's the Western that seems to be the most indoctrinated, I use that word,
Oh.
to a new system can't be done. So we'll see as this comes out. So I'm not worried about the numbers. The numbers don't bother me. As people start to realize that there is a choice, then it will go like wildfire in my mind.
Absolutely. Speak another time. Take care. Bye.